Evolutionary capitalism, why an anarcho-capitalist society is unstable. Property allocation via competitive bidding in a post-Lockean framework. Abstract. This paper introduces a novel framework for property allocation and economic organization based on competitive bidding and evolutionary feedback. Rejecting foundational tenets of Austrian economics such as subjective value, praxeology, voluntarism, the economic calculation problem, and the non-aggression principle. This system proposes an alternative grounded in objective productivity, real-time decision-making efficiency, and dynamic ownership determined by comparative advantage. Property, money, and decision rights are understood not as static entitlements, but as fluid instruments to optimize societal productivity. 1. Introduction: the instability of Lockean anarcho-capitalism. The system presented in this paper, Evolutionary Capitalism, is not only grounded in evolutionary game theory and systemic optimization, but it also functions under both self-interested and super-individual evolutionary frameworks. That is, it is incentive-compatible for rational, profit-maximizing agents as well as for a hypothetical perfect evolutionary being whose sole objective is the long-term flourishing and optimization of adaptive systems. In purely self-interested models, actors such as enforcement businesses naturally converge toward the highest bidder because doing so maximizes their personal revenue, minimizes conflict costs, and maintains reputational trust within the economic ecosystem. Simultaneously, from the standpoint of an evolutionary optimizer, this behavior leads to an ever-improving distribution of decision-making power toward those with the highest comparative advantage, those most fit to use resources productively over time. Thus, evolutionary capitalism satisfies both short-term incentive alignment for individual actors and long-term systemic adaptation, making it robust across multiple rationality paradigms. Anarcho-capitalist societies grounded in Lockean property rights rely on historical claims, first-use principles, and voluntary exchange enforced by private protection agencies. However, such systems are not evolutionarily stable. The core vulnerability arises from the fact that enforcement agencies, operating as rational profit-seeking businesses, face a dominant strategy to accept the highest bid for enforcement services. In any open environment, enforcement firms are incentivized to prioritize clients who offer greater economic return, regardless of past ownership claims. Over time, any enforcer who rigidly defends a prior claimant against a higher bidder sacrifices revenue, incurs opportunity costs, and risks exclusion from the reputationally governed market. This behavior is not sustainable under competition. Thus, the Lockean system collapses into contradiction. If enforcement agencies pursue their rational self-interest, they gradually abandon Lockean principles and default toward a bid-maximizing model. The result is a systemic shift from moralized property enforcement to productivity-optimized property allocation. This paper formalizes such a system as evolutionary capitalism, where decision rights flow to those with the greatest comparative advantage in real time. Numerical example: evaluating stability and cost under competing systems. Pre-conflict leverage and risk consideration. Before any escalation occurs, the current owner of a property has a choice: accept the highest bid and relinquish control voluntarily, or risk contesting ownership. If they contest, they must spend the full value of their original bid in defensive costs, possibly losing the property anyway and depleting their capital in the process. This creates a rational incentive to accept the highest bid, especially in a transparent environment where reputational loss has compounding downstream effects. Accepting the highest bid is also the dominant strategy for any enforcement business operating in a market system governed by evolutionary capitalism.